Again, I am joined by former U.S. Attorney John McKay, who now teaches national security law. So you are an expert in this area, and you call today's move unprecedented.
Yes, I think it is unprecedented. There are certain things in the government that we hope will never be politicized. And one of those is our ability to gather intelligence and to prevent those who would seek to spy on the United States. Those are two very important functions of the United States government. We don't see those politicized very often. We may have seen that today.
And you served under former President George W. Bush.
Yes.
But again, our national security and DOJ is supposed to be completely neutral, operate in a neutral, bipartisan manner. Today we saw a level of partisanship interjected in this process.
Yeah, I think the partisanship is clearly appearing within the House Intelligence Committee. You saw at least 2 votes that were on party lines that had to do with substantive intelligence gathering. That has not occurred, in my knowledge, in the history of the Intelligence Committee. Typically, the Intelligence Committee works together to protect us, both in terms of our ability to gather intelligence and to fight those who would spy on the United States. This seems to be a very big break from that practice, and it seems to be based purely on politics. We know underneath this is a serious concern about the status of Mr. Carter Page. Apparently, we don't know for sure, but apparently an intelligence wiretap was granted by a United States District Judge on Mr. Page, and the FBI submitted materials, both signed by officials formerly appointed by the Obama administration and appointed by President Trump. So that's a straight up intelligence community important process that now seems to be part of a political football game in Washington, D.C.
In your assessment of what was released today, does it seem like any methods or dangerous, potentially risky information was released to the public? Well,
first, it's clear that document had top secret clearance, and the House Intelligence Republicans requested it be declassified, and the president, in fact, declassified it. But that means that the information contained in that memo came at least from highly classified material that was part of the intelligence wiretap that was granted in the case. So I'm concerned that while it may not appear that there were methods or sources disclosed in the document itself, it's being carefully studied by Russian agents right now. I don't have any doubt about that, and that is something that is unprecedented as well, that a document would be released, essentially turned over to the Russians for their analysis. And the idea that a document would be released for these purposes, that's unprecedented. That the document itself, garnered from intelligence that's highly classified, would then be released to the public, this just hasn't happened.
Republicans who supported the release would argue that this was needed for transparency. I want to put up a quote by Representative Dan Newhouse, the only Washington Republican to comment or issue a statement so far. And he said, in part, Americans must be able to trust that the FISA process is above reproach. Your response to that?
Well, those are nice words. The FISA process should be above reproach. It is typically handled by United States district judges. We have a lot of confidence in United States district judges. In this case, you have House Republicans in the Intelligence Committee releasing apparently part of an affidavit filed in the FISA court. That should never have occurred, and that's certainly not transparent to release part of the affidavit. We don't know what the rest of the evidence was that the government had, the Justice Department had, in requesting that warrant against Mr. Page.
And lastly, final question. This will no doubt escalate some tension between the White House and FBI, since this was against the advice of Christopher Wray, FBI director. So what will you be watching in the days to come?
Well, we're going to look at Christopher Wray, who is a very capable FBI director appointed by President Trump, and Rod Rosenstein, to whom Mr. Wray reports. He's the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, also appointed by President Trump. Both of them went to the president and urged him, it appears in very strong terms, not to declassify this document and risk disclosure of our sources and methods. So you're going to want to look not just at Mr. Wray, but Mr. Rosenstein, who is rumored to have been not in the favor of the president, along with the Attorney General and others at the Department of Justice. This is not a good situation, I believe, for our country or for our justice institutions.
And we'll have to leave it there for now. Former U.S. Attorney John McKay, thanks so much for joining us.
Happy to be here.